Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Dhyayamo Dhavalavagunthanavatim Tejo Mayim Naishtikim Snigdhapangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmita Shri Mukhim Vatsalyamritavarshinim Sumadhuram Sankirtanalapinim Shamangim Madhusikta Suktim Amritanandatmikam Ishwarim Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandhadami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yena Traya Bharata Taila Purna Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipa Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapane Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsya Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Namah Shivaya. Good evening to everyone. Thanks for coming.
Can I just switch the mic for 1 second?
Okay. Today we had a little extra bonus. Normally I only do Om Amriteshwari Nama 3 times, but I was in another world, so I chanted the whole Amma's Dhyana Shloka. Om Namah Shivaya. Okay. So we went up to verse 37 or 36, 37 of verse 1. Yes. It's a little difficult to understand which is coming first when you look at this. You have all the Sanskrit, 3 different things. And the English translation comes after the romanization of the Sanskrit. So you've got Sanskrit, Devanagari, then you have the romanization of it, and then you have the English translation. So that's why it can be a little misleading. So we finished up to 37, and now we're reading from verse 38. And today we are going to make sure we conclude chapter 1. So we're going just to start. Without further ado, we're going to read verses 38 and 39. Yadyapyete na pashyanti lobopahata chetasaha kulakshaya kritam dosham mitradrohe chapatakam katham na Nyeyamasmabhihi papadasman nivartitum kulakshaya kritam dosham prapashabdhir janardana. So, whoever remembers the last place wins a prize. Who was last? Who? Okay. So, yes, I guess we're starting from Devidas.
38.
38, yes, in English, please.
Although their minds, clouded by greed, they see no wrong in bringing destruction to the family, and no sin in treachery to friends.
And then 39, next person.
How should we not know to turn away from this sin? We who clearly see the wrong in bridging destruction upon the family of Janardana.
Okay. So, from this verse onwards, Arjuna starts talking about the evils of war, so to speak. And this is something that all of us can really identify with, because nobody likes war, except for maybe a few twisted people, perhaps. But most people don't like war. Most people don't want to have a war or be in a war. And those who are involved in wars always have lots of really ugly things to say about it. So we're not trying to argue for war per se. And in fact, many of the things that Arjuna is saying seem to have a very powerful persuasion to them. But we know we can cheat, and we know the end of the story. We know basically the outcome, and we know that more than anything, Krishna is on Arjuna's side. So we know that the side of the Pandavas is not wrong. They must be correct, and the whole story verifies that. So the only conclusion we can draw is that somehow Arjuna is confused here, right? But the interesting thing is that even though he's confused, now he feels that he's finally seeing things correctly. This is what he's saying, right? No, wait a second, I finally got it. No, it's not this, it's that. And so it's actually very common thing that happens to all of us. We think that we've finally figured it out and everybody else is wrong. But this is often a sign of our own inner confusion. It's a symbol, it's a symptom here of Arjuna's moha, or his inner conflict, his confusion. So, as we said in earlier classes, even though he viewed everything one way, his whole, the whole time they were in hiding, or they were banished, now he's suddenly seeing it differently. So this is showing the power of the attachments. This is what we talked about in multiple classes before. So what's happening is that the attachments are pulling. We have different quote-unquote bodies, right? We talk about the physical body, and then what are the other bodies that we have? Actually, if you go a little bit deeper, not just the three bodies, there's a concept of 5 sheaths. Anybody remember those? After physical body, what is their next one, Devidas? No, there's one in between. That's not too important. Huh? Pranamaya. Annamaya is the physical body. Pranamaya is the energy. What comes after that? No, she said Manomaya, the emotional or the mental sheath. Vijnanamaya is the intellectual layer of our individuality, and then the bliss sheath, right? Right. Get into anatomy. Yeah. So the point here is that Arjuna is focused in one layer of his individuality. It's not like he's having an out-of-body experience or anything. He's still in his sense of self, but he's in one part of it. So he's in his emotional self, basically. So he's in the manomaya kosha, you could say, or he's identified with his emotions of attachment, which is not, like we said before, it's not evil. It's not that we're anti-emotion or anything. It's just that there's a time and place for everything. And usually a battlefield is not the time and place for it, especially when you've been preparing for years and years for this, and then you suddenly have a change. So he's in that emotional persona, so to speak, which is becoming tremendously powerful, and it's overpowering his, like we said before, what? Discrimination, his judgment, his intellectual persona, right? So then what happens typically to all of us when our attachments or our emotions, however you want to look at it, when they overpower our intellect, what happens to us typically? You get upset. We make wrong decisions. And when you're trying to make, the interesting thing is, you're still making a decision, right? So it means we don't act on instincts, like animals do. We think things through. But we're thinking them and reaching a wrong conclusion. So that means that you're using your intellect to reach the wrong conclusion, which means quite often what happens is that we rationalize and justify all our weaknesses using that same intellect. It's not like suddenly the intellect gets ejected from our persona. It's still there, it's still functioning, it's just malfunctioning. So when you're still thinking rationally, logically, but you're coming up with countless arguments why you shouldn't do this and you should do that, and it's leading you to the wrong conclusion. I'll give you one example. I think we were in the ashram. Amma was telling an example about, I think it was alcohol or cigarettes, but we're in the West here, so let's call it, what do you call them? Narcotics, so there's another word for it. The Japanese and Malayalam words are coming to me. What do you call illegal drugs? Huh? Yeah, but in English, what do you call illegal drugs?
Addictive.
Huh? No, you call them narcotics, so just drugs.
Substance.
Okay, just drugs, yeah? So let's say you're a drug addict, huh? You're a drug addict. And you say to yourself, I should really give up heroin or whatever it is. Nothing against that heroin personally or anything like that. But then you start, let's say the drug addict says to himself, but all those people who are selling me the heroin, they need income, right? They have families too. They want to send their kids to college, they have to retire, they have to save up money, and what are they going to do if I stop patronizing them? So I really, in the name of Dharma, I cannot leave them in the lurch. I have to go and buy this, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got a beautiful rationalization for keeping it up.
Isn't that irrational and illogical rather than the opposite?
Exactly. Well, it's an example of a intellect that has been corrupted through attachment, right? Moha, yeah. And that's what moha does to our intellect. It corrupts the reasoning faculty and refracts the light, like we said earlier, and makes things distorted in our perception. So even scholars can easily, you can, I think in the old days Amma used to make one of the brahmacharis argue one point and then another brahmachari argue an opposite point. And there was a guy named Panditji who was an old, Sanskrit scholar, and Amma would just say, you argue one point, and she'd have the scholar, now you argue against him, and he would come up with 100 arguments against it, just for the fun of it, and quoting the scriptures and all these different texts. So you can argue anything, basically, if you're intellectually, acute. So the intellect will provide any argument we want, depending upon what our attachments are. And Arjuna is saying that, okay, let's say the Kauravas are confused, but why should we also be confused? If they're confused, at least we're seeing things properly, so we should leave this battlefield. right? Why do we also want to be confused like them? So, and then is it in this verse that he says it, or am I jumping the gun? Yeah, he's saying that, they see no wrong in the treachery, but, we can at least leave. And we can refrain from fighting. If we refrain from fighting them, that solved the problem, right? Does it solve the problem? Just you tell me. Why does it or why doesn't it? You gotta have two people to fight. So one guy says, I don't want to fight. In this case, does it solve the problem? Huh? Why doesn't it solve the problem? Yeah. And then maybe Arjuna personally, Arjuna's a strong guy. He can live in the forest. He can hunt snakes and live off of that maybe if he wants. He'll be able to get water. But what about everybody else? Personally, for him, it's a solution, perhaps. Temporary. But, yeah, like we've seen before in earlier classes, there's so many other people there in the country who are counting on him and the other Kshatriyas to protect them. So, it is a selfish solution, basically, for him to run away. That's the problem. Now, we see, and we're going to see all the way till the end of this chapter, Krishna doesn't say anything, he's just listening, And like we said, why doesn't Krishna say anything in response to all of these comments that Arjuna is making? We just pointed out the problem. Why can't he just say that to Arjuna?
Arjuna has not asked for help yet. He's just...
Arjuna he's not asking for help, which means when you don't ask for help, what does that typically mean? And it means what? You're not ready because what? You think you know the answer. Little kids ask for help right away because they know they don't know the answer. That's why Amma encourages us to, resuscitate that feeling of a small child, because a small child knows that he doesn't know the answer. Whereas we as adults fool ourselves into thinking that I know everything and I've got everything under control, And then what happens is when it's not under control, you do everything you can to make it look like it's under control until everything blows up, and then you ask for help, but then it's often too late. So Arjuna is in that behavioral pattern right now. So Krishna is like, okay, if you think you know everything, go ahead and tell me. And he's just listening to his arguments. So this is what happens to us also. When we don't want to listen to other people and we don't want to ask for help, often we just start talking. This is what we're supposed to do, this is what I'm going to do, this is what we should do. And, if the other person's smart, they won't say anything. They'll just let us, speak our piece and then wait until we ask for help. In fact, the scriptures say that you should not offer unsolicited advice. Unsolicited advice is a waste of energy. I think the word translation is, it's like screaming in the forest. There's nobody there to hear you and you're shouting at the top of your lungs. That's what it's like. So, and also the more we do that, the less value there is to our words. It's like the capitalism, supply and demand. The demand is zero and there's infinite supply of advice. So it's worth nothing, right? But if there's a big demand and then the wise old elder just says, let go. 2 words. That's really big, they'll contemplate, oh, he said let go, what does he mean by that? And then he walks out of the room and then doesn't say anything for another 5 weeks or something like that. So you'll really think hard about it. But here with us, it's the opposite. That's why Amma sometimes doesn't say anything to us, because we're not asking for help or we're not really ready to listen. So Krishna does have lots to say. How do we know that Krishna has a lot to say? We're cheating. Even by cheating, how do you know that he has a lot to say? He's got 17 chapters, right, of things to say. But somebody should have removed the wax from their ears. So Arjuna, he's waiting for Arjuna to say that. But just think, there's some of the things that Krishna could say in response to Arjuna here are, you're saying that about Duryodhana, but Duryodhana can say the same things about his side of the army. His relatives are on both sides of the battlefield as well. Why doesn't he run away from the battlefield? He's not interested in doing that. The difference is that he doesn't see you as his family. He sees you as an enemy. So one guy sees the other guy as an enemy, the other guy sees him as a family member and becomes weak. Well, Arjuna knows that if he turns around and flees, that he's just going to shoot an arrow and finish him off. So, and Arjuna is professing that he's okay with that later. And if Duryodhana wasn't out to kill Arjuna in the first place, there wouldn't be any problem. That's the problem. The problem is that he's out to kill him. Arjuna did everything he could. Everybody on that side of the army the battle did everything they could to avoid it. So it's really a question of dharma versus adharma. So now, why can't the Kauravas see this point, though? For us, it's so clear, right? The Kauravas, were they uneducated? Is that why? I mean, if you don't read the story, you might not really know. They're educated, right?
They got the same education.
They got the same education. Were they low class, just, what do you say, the caste, very low caste. Social status was very low. Huh?
Blind allegiance to the law.
And that allegiance is where? It's in their mind, right? It's not just like a pact, or it's not like, oh darn, we signed a contract we shouldn't have signed. It's not like that. No allegiance or no necessarily any contract with adharma. It's their mind that has allied itself, and they are helplessly following those negative tendencies, those negative qualities in their mind. So in a sense, you have to kind of feel sorry for them because they're being ruled by those. And it's much like what we saw in Ravana. Ravana, everybody knows, many people know the story. There's that story where, I can't remember how it comes up, but somebody, I think Vibhishana or somebody is talking with Ravana, and he says, I know what is right and I know what is wrong, but I'm not able to do what's right, and I can't avoid doing what's wrong. Can you imagine such a state of mind being in? I mean, we all feel like that at one time or another, but not with really bad things. We just have small things like that, eating bad things or saying things we shouldn't say. So here it is, their version of that is so huge that it's questioning the survival of the whole country. And even educated people do lots of bad things. What are some examples of bad things that highly educated people do in today's society? Huh? What? Gambling, okay. Hacking. What about completely illegal things? Not just gambling, but what are examples? How about white-collar crime? Don't we say criminal mastermind? It's not like he's, dumb and that's why he's doing a bank robbery. I mean, they think it through, they plan everything out so detailed. They're geniuses, but they call like evil genius or something like that, So,
Now the banks are actually robbing.
Right, it's good. They're robbing us, right? So anyhow, this is what we see is when your mind is completely consumed by greed, that intellect works in a very crooked way, and it can be highly refined, sharp, very subtle intellect, but it's working in a negative way. So we see that, and sometimes the education just serves to provide that many more refined and very intricate rationalizations for negative behavior, for destructive behavior. That's why Amma is not necessarily in favor of just lots of intellectualization about things. She always encourages us to bring out those qualities of the heart, because that's what's going to save us from doing bad things. Your conscience will save you. Just the intellect alone won't necessarily save us. That's what we see in the case of the Kauravas, Ravana, and all these people. So the evils of war that Arjuna sees are things like destroying millions of warrior men. And he's saying, when you destroy the men, you're basically, they're, half of the family. The kids are just following the parents, so you're destroying a family, basically. So maybe, what if someone were to say that, well, the family can and should be sacrificed for the sake of Dharma? What would the rejoinder to that be? I think Arjuna is going to tell that to us in the next verse. Kulakshay pranashyanti kuladharma sanatana dharme nashte kulam kritsnam adharmo bhi bhavatyuta adharmo bhi bhavatyuta. Yes, sometimes you can't split it where you want to. Okay, Darius, please read that English for us.
The age-old family dharmas are lost in the destruction of family. It's dharma lost, dharma overtakes the entire family.
Okay, so just to back up a little bit, he's emphasizing the importance of the family, and we all know the importance of families because Amma emphasizes it. And here in the ashram, we give importance to the family. We encourage families to come for satsang, and we allow the kids to do pretty much whatever they want. They're welcome to. Amma puts them on the stage. They crawl all over her. She doesn't complain. We're very family friendly, definitely. And Amma says it's not just, putting up with these things. It is understanding that the family is key to the preservation of Dharma and to the spread of Dharma through society. And we only really understand the importance of the family once it starts to erode, like in today's society. For many, probably centuries, the family cohesion was sort of taken for granted, but I think after the Industrial Revolution and all, the way society has changed so much, the family, the nuclear family and that cohesion has really disintegrated at a dramatic pace. So what we see is, Amma often points to the family as really the savior of society, but it's disintegrating. That's why we're having so many problems. It's one of the main problems in today's world. And so Arjuna is saying that the war will destroy families, and when you lose the family, you lose Dharma. Because the point is that you can't preserve Dharma in a vacuum, or you can't just say that we're going to put it in a museum, or put it in a bottle and preserve it. What do you call it? Cryonic something or other? You're going to put the body in some kind of, Cryogenic. We're going to take Dharma and put it in a cryogenic state, and then after Kali Yuga is over, we'll resuscitate it, and then everything will be fine. He says, his point is that, no, you need a medium to express that Dharma, otherwise it's going to be gone. Actually, it's a very potent argument, but Amma herself has said that she said that we feel, one person asked this question, Amma, in today's world, how can we live a life of truth and Dharma? Because it's Kali Yuga and everything is gone to the dogs. And you know what Amma said? She said, truth and Dharma may have receded from view in today's society, but she says they are Shashvata, they are eternal. Nobody can really destroy them. So she says the way to verify that is you live a life of truth and Dharma. You become an embodiment, you become the manifestation of it. So it's the opposite. You can't say that I can't live a life of truth and Dharma because they're disappearing. They're disappearing because there's nobody living it. It's the opposite. If you live it, they're going to come back into existence. So it's the exact opposite of what our intellect, our mind would have us believe. Let's continue. Verse 41. Adharmabhi bhavat Krishna pradushanti kulastriyaha strishu dushtasu varshneya jayate varna sankara. Okay, Krishna Kumar.
When adharma prevails, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt. And with the corruption of women, O Ashneya, intermixture of caste happens.
Okay. So interesting mode of reasoning. He's going a road. He's going down a reason, but let's take it for what it is and see what's there. Okay. You know, when he's talking about the family disintegrating, let's keep in mind, like we said earlier in the class, we have about 4 million men on the battlefield at that time. Right? They're all on the battlefield. It's probably 5,300 years ago or so. That's roughly the male population of America around 1820. So even if India had a huge population at the time, nothing like today, of course, but you've got, like we had in the early 19th century, all the men died, let's say. Imagine what effect that would happen on society. The women would say, great, we finally have some peace of mind, right? But, especially in a traditional society, people were depending on each other. It wasn't like today where, you had all these, you had such a free society. And the women were completely dependent on the men, and the men were completely dependent on the women. There was no way around it. So that's the kind of complete disastrous, outcome that they were foreseeing, or he was foreseeing. But why the focus on women here? Why would we suddenly turn to the women? What is so critical about, why is he going down the focus on women? Right, okay, but let's say that's okay. Then, but why, or let's say there are some men less, but why is he focused on women and connecting that with Dharma so much? Yes?
Because women rear children,
Ah,
they're raising children
there you
for
go.
the future, and then they're holding the
Right.
legacy.
It's so obvious in a way, but especially in those days, if a woman is not raised with the proper values, that means that when she becomes an adult and a mother, she's not going to know how to impart values to her child. The men are off somewhere doing something, fighting a war, or plowing the field or something, and the women are taking care of the kids, at least in a traditional society. That's how it works. So, and it creates a vicious cycle, because then her children don't have any values, and then the men will go out and do bad things, and the women won't know how to raise their kids. It's just like it perpetuates itself. So Amma also says, I can't remember which speech it was, maybe Jaipur's speech, she says that men and women are like the two wings of a bird, right? So just say you cut off one of the wings of the bird and you've just got the left side of the women, or the right side, whatever it is. How can a bird fly? The bird of society will crash and burn, so to speak. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that appellation of Krishna. Varshnaya, what is it?
Varsha, it's that the clan, he's the, yeah, he's the leader of the clan of, Vrishni clan.
Oh, Vrishni.
Yeah.
Yes.
So many appellations, I don't think we'll be able to keep track of them all. And yes, okay, so now, why do we care about the intermixture of social groups? What does that matter? Because in today's society, we don't even know what a social group is anymore. It's totally irrelevant, so to speak. Yes?
Well, I think that maybe it was an integral part of the order of society.
Okay.
And that the teachings perhaps were passed orally, and you really had to be focused on anything.
Yeah. And the whole system of, what do they call them, apprenticeships and guilds, learning carpentry or masonry or whatever it was all handed down from generation to generation.
But Dharma was caste related.
Dharma, that's a different version of Dharma. That means like your social function in a way, just like the Dharma of human beings is to, they have a Dharma of like being compassionate and things that only human beings can do. It's like saying like that the Mason's Dharma is to do masonry. Like that. It doesn't mean it's a good or bad thing necessarily in that case. But now the word here is varna. That's the word that's being used in Sanskrit, if I'm not. Varna sankaraha. So varna, as many Indian language speakers know, means color. And it's translated, I would imagine that if you read the Malayalam translation of this verse, it might use the word jati, if you look at it. I wouldn't be surprised if they use jati to translate this. Yeah, so that means already, even within the Indian languages, you're getting confused. Because jati means birth, something to do with birth, right? I would imagine that the etymology of it has something to do with birth. Varna, just from the word color, how do you get birth? Right? Color is color. And we talked about it before. Color of what? What does it mean? Color of your mind. It's the color of your mind, your mental qualities. That's what it's really referring to. So and Krishna even points it out in verse 13 of chapter 4. He says, I created the 4 divisions of society based on actions and mental qualities. That's what he says. So he says it nothing to do, he doesn't say it has to do with your birth. He never mentions that anywhere. Somehow that came in Indian history. We don't want to go there. It's just a whole different argument. But Amma herself obviously doesn't, care about our stature of birth. She wasn't born into a royal family herself. And she takes people, no matter what country they're born into, or just because they're born in a high family in India doesn't mean she gives them any more attention than she would someone born in a lower family in a foreign country. So that's shows how Amma doesn't give that much importance to the social position. But the problem here of these groups mixing that he's referring to, and just to give it a just handling, is that if you're talking, even if you just treat it as mental qualities, so people who don't even have mental qualities in common, coming together and creating a family, what kind of family is that going to be? Let's say the color of your mind is totally different. You're drawn together maybe by physical attraction or by money or something. You marry somebody for their money. It's going to create a very, problematic family life. So I guess Arjuna perhaps could be proposing that when you have families like that spreading throughout society, then you're going to have, society is going to suffer. Yes?
Aren't there, in just traditionally, aren't there a lot of arranged marriages?
Yes.
So there's certain reasons why certain...
Yeah, there are arranged marriages, and even though many people do look for people in the modern day, they look for people who are from a similar cultural background. Let's say you didn't do that, and you were going to just say, we don't care about the social position of them. They would still compare the mental qualities. They would make sure that they have compatibility mentally, and they have the same principles, they have the same goals in life. And you can look at the horoscope and say whether they have compatibility. That's what they normally do in the arranged marriages. So if you don't choose your and basically the mixture of the social groups, he's also talking about it's creating confusion in society. People are going for all different jobs. Like in today's world, you don't take a job necessarily because one of your parents was doing that. Sometimes not. And you don't take that necessarily because of your mental qualities either. Usually people go for jobs because of, they're after what? Money. What does that say about society? In the old days, You didn't, you were a fisherman or you were a carpenter and you weren't so worried about like, how much money am I going to have? And then the focus was on teaching this beautiful thing to your children. Look how to make a sculpture beautifully. This is how you fish. This is how, whatever it is you're doing. And then that was good enough for people. These days, it's all about money. So it's a society pervaded by that greed. So I think in a way there is something we can say, yes, if he was correct in his argument, there would be some reason to that. And so his argument is that this is what happens when families become unstable. Families become unstable due to war. Therefore, we should abandon this war. So, what do you say? Is he right? I'm also kind of supporting his argument. I'm giving reasons why you should go for it. Makes sense? Should we all go home? Just call it quits? Don't read the next 17 chapters, yes?
Somebody said it last week, but I have to repeat it again. It's hard not to identify with what Arjuna is going through.
Right. But what, if you look at it with an objective eye, step back for a second. Look at it with an objective eye. What is the substance of his arguments? Think about it. Is it happening in the present? So it's what? Supposition, conjecture. It's highly conjectural in nature. It's just he's conjecturing that this is what's going to happen. So this is the dharma that may take place, whereas at the present moment, what's going on?
Or could you say it's ahimsa without value?
Ahimsa without value. It's misguided ahimsa, which is not real ahimsa actually, right? Ahimsa needs to be supported by dharma to be ahimsa. Whereas there's an immediate adharma taking place right before his eyes. And in order to justify, he's ignoring that and conjecturing about an adharma that may take place in the future. So this is where, if you were in a court of law, probably the defense attorney would say, look, this is conjecture. We have an illegal thing happening right now. That's what we're worried about. So the judge would probably throw out the case, I would imagine. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. So, but still, Arjuna continues his arguments. There's no judge to throw him out. So Krishna is very patient. Sometimes these realized Mahatmas are too patient, we feel. Okay, verse 42. Sankaro narakayaiva kulaknanam kulasya cha patanti pitaro hyesham lupta pindodaka kriyaha. Where's the microphone now?
This admixture of races leads only to hell, both for the family and its destroyers. Their forefathers fall as well when the offerings for the Pitru Loka cease.
There we go. So you remember we talked about two different types of results that any action can create. Remember we talked about, I think last week, there were two types. Anybody remember? One was tangible, concrete outcome, and the other one was intangible, invisible. Maybe that was 2 weeks ago. So what he's been talking about until now is all tangible, or what we call drishta phalam. Now he starts talking about the intangible or the invisible outcomes of the war, the adrishta phalam. So he's talking about everybody's going to go to hell, the whole country's going to go to the dogs, after death also. And so the people who fight the war are going to die, they're going to go to hell. The people who are left over, they're going to go to a hell of sorts, because society is going to be thrown into a complete disarray. And those who who win, they're also going to go to hell because they're doing a bad thing. And the ancestors are going to go to hell also. Why are they going to go to hell? He says it here basically.
I think because the Pitrya, what line are we on?
42.
Oh yeah, the Pitru
is one of the
Bunch of Mahayagnas, yeah.
So if the Dharma falls apart and they're no longer doing these yagnas
There you go.
to the ancestors, then
So he's got conjecture upon conjecture upon conjecture, right? So you've got the living people are going to hell, the people who win are going to go to hell, the people who die in the battlefield are going to hell, and the people who are already dead are going to go to hell also. So there's like everybody is going to hell. So this what he's talking about is just some simple offerings that you're supposed to do to the ancestors. It's like Pitru Yajna, and I don't know if we have time to talk about it. Maybe if people are interested, they can ask about it. I won't talk about it now. You can ask me later. There's 5 different sacrifices or offerings we're supposed to make, and these are true for those people who are in society. If you renounce the world, you don't have to do it supposedly. Even still, Amma, makes people show respect to traditions. But the point is that for people who have families and are living in society, you're supposed to do all these things daily, every single day. So that's the scary thing. We're not doing most of them. And the reason why you're supposed to do them daily, and the reason why there's 5, is because we're born into this world with 5 types of debt. Ranam. So you have Pancha Ranam and Pancha Yajna, which is like you're paying the monthly mortgage payments or whatever it is. You have 5 different mortgages and you have to pay them all, not monthly, you're paying them every day. So you're born with the mortgage, unfortunately. And that doesn't mean that you're born a sinner, it just means that you're born indebted to all different types of things. You're born, it's only because of your parents that you're born, so you're indebted to them. You're indebted to so many other things. We won't go into that. You can ask me about it if you're interested afterwards. So the point is that there won't be any role models, so there won't be anybody to do these rituals and rites, so everybody is going to suffer. And let's keep going. Okay, it's at the bottom of page 47. Dosher eteihi kulagnanam varna sankara karakaihi utsadyante jati dharmaha kuladharmascha Shashvataha. Next page.
Through the wrongs done by the destroyers of the family in causing the intermixing of caste, the immemorial dharmas of caste and family become lost.
Okay. Now he's made a very categorical statement. Dharma is lost. Dharma is lost. Okay, remember we said, I don't remember whether it was, I think we said it here, we talked about different types of dharma, you remember? There's 3 categories of dharma, does anybody remember what they're called? I don't remember it was here, I've said it so many times, different places, that somebody might remember it. Anybody remember? First one is Samanya. Samanya dharma. Then there's Vishishta dharma. And then there's one more called Apat Dharma. So Samanya Dharma means universal dharmas. Vishishta Dharma means special dharmas. And Apat means crisis. So this might ring some bells. I've talked about this in different occasions and given different examples. But so universal is just like tell the truth and don't steal and don't murder a helpless person, that kind of thing. And special dharmas are for people, you know, your role in society, your age, etc. determine different dharmas you have. Right? Not everybody has the same. A 5-year-old doesn't have the same dharmas as a 50-year-old, or etc. So, and then apadharma means a sudden category of dharma that takes precedence when you're in an emergency situation. I can imagine. Like normally you wouldn't take an axe and chop down somebody's front door, right? Would you? But if there's a fire in the house, you might do it. You're justified, so that kind of thing. So which version of dharma is he talking about? He says the immemorial, what is it? The family dharmas? The immemorial dharmas of caste and family. Again, this is varna, so this English is a bit misleading. Jati, oh it is jati, okay, yeah, so he himself is using the word caste. But which version, so if it's a particular section of society is referred to, and family, so which category of dharmas is he referring to actually? Huh? Huh? Samanya cannot be associated with only one section of society. One section of society, you know, would have to be Vishishta, the second category. So he's not even talking about universal dharma, he's talking about the different dharmas that belong to the special castes and then the family dharma. So he's looking at a limited version of it, and he's also got himself thinking that and he's confusing that with the concept of an eternal dharma, right? An everlasting dharma, and he's thinking that along with the families, dharma is going to get lost. So it's like saying that the life principle is going to disappear when the person dies. That person's body may die, but the life principle is not dying. He's saying that dharma is going to be lost with the dharmi, or the person who's embodying it. So he's saying, how can you tell me you're fighting for dharma? That's his point, right? How can you say you're fighting for dharma? Because the people, these dharmic people, are all going to die. So he's thinking that the dharma is going to evaporate with the people. We're not blaming Arjuna, we're not into Arjuna bashing, don't forget. This is just to make sure that we don't repeat these same mistakes later. Quite likely to do that. Okay, verse 44. Utsanna kula dharmanam manushanam janardana. There's a little spelling mistake here. You can cross off that A, and N-A-R-A-K-E, and then that A after that you can delete that. Narake niyatam vaso bhavati tyanu sushruma. Okay.
Men whose family dharmas have lapsed, so we have heard, O Janardana, necessarily live in hell.
Okay. This is just the same kind of thing, basically. He has heard, again, it's not just conjecture, it's third-hand information, second-hand information, and he's talking about the invisible outcomes of the actions. Not that there isn't any invisible outcomes of the actions, but his arguments are becoming more and more hysterical in a way. And Krishna is that expert psychiatrist who's got the patient on the couch and he's just letting him vent out all his frustration and arguments. And this is much like what Amma does, I think, with us. We go to Amma when we're during darshan, you know, the people come in the line, sometimes they're hysterical and they just cry and just go wild. What does Amma do? All she does is just strokes their face, you know, and just, you know, no. It's nothing like that. Don't worry. I've been in that position, I think. It was, you know, I told you all that story when Ron wasn't here, and it was easy to tell when Ron wasn't here that I was getting roped into the AIMS project back in, I don't remember when it was, 95, 96 or something. And I stumbled in that meeting that they were having where they were trying to find someone to stay in America to run the AIMS office. And I walked in, they said, hey, perfect person. And I just ran out of the room. And then I went in the hall and I was sulking in the corner and Amma called me over. And I went next to her and she just looked at me and she said, "What's wrong?" And I just started crying, you know, and then, you know, and then she was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, you know, yeah, it was like the baby, like, they're saying they're going to put me in America and make me stay here, you know, mean old, you know, Ron and all these guys. and then Amma said, "Who said you're going to keep you there in America?" you know, and then I didn't speak a word of Malayalam at the time, so somebody had to translate for me. Right at that time, the translator shifted from one person to the other. Who should come and start translating at that time? Ron didn't speak Malayalam. Dr. Frame. Dr. Frame came and started the translation. And he was one of the guilty party in the meeting, you know. And so suddenly he was like, you know, no, it's not like that, you know. And then Amma started talking, you know, all I knew is that she was talking really sternly to him in Malayalam about, you know, don't, my poor baby, Shantamrita. I was Amrita Priyan at the time, you know. This poor baby, you know, he's, you know, how can you make him get all scared like that? Of course, at the end of the summer, I ended up staying anyhow, right? So that's another story, but okay, yeah. I've told it a few times that you must not have been in the room. I was looking around to see whether you were in the room and then choosing what to say. Anyhow, it was fun. So, she didn't give me a long lecture on selflessness at that time, right? Because I was in an emotional state. There was no way I was going to listen to that argument or Amma's points. So, where are we? I think we have to get to verse 45. Yes. Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yadraja sukhalobhena hantum swajanam mudyataha.
Alas, we are resolved to commit great sin in that we are prepared to slay our kinsmen out of greed for the pleasures of a kingdom.
What a convincing argument, my gosh. How do you make somebody feel more guilty than that? You know, but the interesting thing is it started off as Arjuna's guilt trip, right? He's got his own guilt trip. Now what has he done? Well, you notice anything different? A big transition comes in this verse. So he's incriminating Krishna in the whole thing also. You know, can you imagine saying to Amma, what are we doing, you know, we are doing the wrong thing, you know, you're telling Amma that, you know, if somebody's confused, it's Arjuna, it's not Krishna, or it's not Amma. So all this preparation for the war, what were we thinking? You know, and so now all of us are motivated by greed. I mean, who said that there was any greed involved here? So he's completely forgotten the whole, in the history, the past. This forgetfulness is actually very, very dangerous. You forget why you're doing something. And then sometimes you even convince yourself that you have the wrong motives for doing something, right? You know, and Krishna points out in the second chapter that this forgetfulness, that when moha takes over and your intellect or your discernment is destabilized, you forget why you're doing things, or you forget the experience you had when you did the wrong thing, and you forget why you're doing the right thing. So you get completely confused. That's exactly what's happening to him. Just the fact that he's including Krishna and everybody. And they lived without any pleasures for, you know, over 10 years. Now suddenly he's saying that he's motivated by pleasure. I mean, he should know that he's not living only for pleasure, but anyhow he got confused along the way. Okay, we'll keep going. Yadimam apratikaram ashastram shastrapanayah dhartarashtra rane hanyus Tanme Kshemataram Bhaved. Okay.
It were better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, should slay me, unresisted and unarmed in battle.
All right. Now he's really going on with this argument. But it's okay. I mean, there's something to be said for it. If you weren't on the right side of the war, and if you weren't a prince who's supposed to protect the helpless people, there'd be some, if you were a monk, or if you were just a regular householder, there'd be some logic to this, be some reason to this. And the other problem is that the war has officially started, right? How do we know it started? Because they blew the conches, they made the battle cry, everybody's waiting for him. And as far as the Kauravas are concerned, it's already begun. And they're not going to stop until every last Pandava is dead. Probably. So he knows that, and he's figuring, okay, let them kill me, who cares? At least I'm not participating in this unjust thing. It's like the police officer, we've been through this. You've got Jimmy Hoffa right in front of you, and he says, wait a second, he's my second cousin. Why am I going to do this? Let him go. Let Jimmy Hoffa shoot me, who cares? So, that Jimmy Hoffa's a different generation, maybe nobody knows who he was. Huh? Yeah, he was. Who's the Al Capone or something? Who's a modern day Jimmy Hoffa? We don't know any, huh? Okay, Al Capone, right? Somebody. And these days it's like the governors, and it's like okay. Scratch that one from the recording. Okay, I didn't say that. Sorry?
In Illinois, they arrested several.
Okay, all right.
Not the current one.
Right. No, the one, fortunately, he's a good guy. All right, so this is the end of all his arguments and his lecture to Krishna. His confusion is complete, and both parties fall silent, so it switches to a narrative. And this is the last verse of chapter 1. Evam Uttvarjuna Sankhe Ratopasta Upavishat Visrajya Sasaram Chapam Shoka Samvigna Manasaha. Okay.
Sanjaya said, having spoken thus at the time of battle, casting away arrows and bows, Arjuna sat down on the seat of the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with sorrow.
What an ending, my gosh. What does that symbolize? Immersed in sorrow. That's a very key word here. Self-pity, okay. Helpless. He's helpless. He's completely in the grip of samsara. He's in the grip of his own ignorance, right? He's completely helpless. And this is when we are in that condition also. We have to, if we can just get enough objectivity when we're immersed in sorrow to say, oh, this is Arjuna. I'm in the Arjuna state right now. Unfortunately, most of the time when we're in that state, we don't have the objectivity to perceive it as a third person, as a, so but we're so identified with it. But, oh, now I'm in Arjuna state. That means what I need to do is read the Gita, or I need to read Amma's teachings. Usually we start thinking all these negative things. Oh my God, why did he do that? Why did she say that? Blah, blah, blah. And we don't think to turn to spirituality. So what is symbolic about his throwing away his bow and arrow in this case? Is there anything symbolic? Yes, Lorena? Lorena raised her hand, sorry.
Does he finally surrender? He's used so many arguments, and now he's like done. His own arguments
Okay, unfortunately we know from chapter 2 that he's not done yet. Yeah, because the teaching starts in verse 11, so he has 10 more verses of things to say. Somehow, he's not done with his arguments, but he's sure pouting. He's doing a good job of pouting. Okay. Yeah, Tom?
But his identity was so wrapped in being a warrior. I mean, he
Okay.
Shiva, so that's such a symbol of his virility and being a warrior.
Okay, and it's what do warriors need in order to do their dharma? A bow and arrow, right? In those days. It's like the police officer throwing in his badge or removing, his gun or whatever it is. It's like the soldier throwing away his gun and it would be, what would it be in the case of a teacher? It would be like throwing away a book or throwing away the chalk, right? It's like a parent abandoning the child, whatever. Whatever your dharma is, the biggest symbol you can think of your dharma, whatever that is, it's like a writer throwing away the pen. So whatever your dharma is, that symbol of it, you're throwing away. Yes? It would be the dharma of your action, whatever you're doing right now. So if it's Milind, it'd be throwing the computer out the window, which he probably feels like doing every day.
Don't encourage him.
Yeah. If it's the mother, it's like throwing the child out the window, which she probably feels like doing every day also. The husband throwing the wife throwing the husband out the window. So it's like your dharma, you have one symbol of that, a beautiful symbol of that. And I just want to throw this thing out the window. That's where we all are at one point or another. So, but he doesn't run away. He's still there, sitting in the chariot. He didn't get down from the chariot and run or walk away. Why? Why not? Why did he sit down in the chariot? He's smart. If he gets out of Krishna's chariot, then he's really in danger of being plucked off by somebody's arrows, huh? Okay. Well, I don't think, maybe he's not thinking that rationally at this time.
He also lost his strength to walk.
Okay, he's so distraught, so immersed and overpowered that maybe he doesn't have the strength to walk. Any other ideas?
Maybe he's expecting Krishna to say something.
See, the thing is, he's in a very emotional, kind of childish-like state. He's complaining and pouting, and So then, when anybody who's raised a child knows that what happens when the kids have a tantrum. I can remember from my own tantrums. I don't have to raise children to know. You throw a tantrum, but you don't leave. You're waiting for someone to come back and coddle you.
Waiting for chapter 2.
He's waiting for chapter 2. But Krishna's not going to baby him here. He just keeps quiet the whole time. And so he actually says a couple things, in between. So it's like that case, you're stating that, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to do this, blah, blah. And you're having a tantrum. Somehow inside you know that there's more to the story, but you don't know what it is. And you're kind of hoping that the other person's going to say that for you. So you don't leave the room, you don't get up and walk out.
But does he really give a clue to that? You think the fact that he doesn't leave, you feel that's a clue?
Well, we're just conjecture. This is also conjecture. It's just, he's actually in a very sort of an emotional, immature state right now, right? So he's really turning, and we know that deeper inside of him, he is really, something inside of him is yearning to surrender to Krishna. He's just not there yet.
I don't think we have much empathy for him, do we?
Well, we should have a lot of empathy for him because he's just a hair's breadth away from throwing himself at Krishna's feet. He hasn't hit rock bottom yet. That's where we are. He's pretty far down. He's scraping, he's almost about to hit bedrock, but he's got to dig a few shovelfuls down to hit bedrock, rock bottom. So we can identify with him because we've all been there before. At least most of us, I think we're all old enough that we've been there or near that at one point or another. And this happens around Amma. Some people in the question line, this is the other thing, they come and they just pour out their mind and they complain or they cry or anything, but they don't get up and walk away. They're still sitting next to Amma. They're kind of waiting for Amma to say something more. And I'm gonna open her mouth, and then they'll start talking again, Dhamma. So they're really not ready to hear her. She'll say something. Haven't you ever heard someone, you see it's happening in Malayalam, maybe during darshan, you don't know what they're saying, but it kind of looks like they're arguing with Amma, no? You may have seen that. And often, we see two couples, sometimes the wife comes and then they goes away, and the husband comes and it goes away, and then they're arguing with Amma over something, we don't know what. But they don't get up and leave. So and they want to hear Amma say it, but then they hear it and they're like, I didn't want to hear that. Yes?
Isn't he ultimately asking for approval? Isn't he ultimately saying, here's my argument, what do you think?
Yeah, in a sense, he's kind of looking, he really wants Krishna to rubber stamp his escapism, but Krishna's not ready to do that. So he's even more, upset, perhaps, this is all conjecture. But what we know is we get a little more insight from Jnanadev's, from Jnaneshwari, his commentary. He says, just as the sun becomes lusterless in an eclipse, similarly Arjuna appeared extremely distressed, threw his bow away and bow and arrow away, and floods of tears flowed from his eyes. This is what Jnanadev says. So we know that he was crying, just broken down, right? It's good. Actually, for a warrior, maybe you need to cry every once in a while to really get in touch with something deeper in your life instead of just being victorious your whole life. So, Amma says that those tears are the tears washing and making your ego melt. So Arjuna must have had a huge ego developing over all those years, so maybe that's starting to melt. So Vyasa stops the first chapter here. And maybe we can add a little to be continued ... at the end. And he's got to encourage us to read on, right? So what do you think? Does he get up and leave? Does he run away or not? No, don't answer. Next week. Next week we'll find out whether he runs away or not. And we're going to chant the last concluding verse of... It is not a verse of chapter 1 per se. There's a common ending to every chapter. We're going to chant that together. Om Tat Sata. You can repeat after me. Om Tat Sata. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su. Upanishatsu. Brahma Vidyayam. Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Prathamodhyayaha. Someone want to read that? How about Shane? Can you read that English for us then?
Thus ends the first chapter named Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna's Dilemma, of the Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita, the scripture of yoga, dealing with the science of the absolute in the form of the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna.
Wow, you said a lot of things in one little verse here, huh? We won't go into this in too much detail, but we're going to hear the majority of these words at the end of every chapter over and over again. So we might as well explain what it is this time, and then we can skip it from next time onwards. So that's it, then the first chapter named Arjuna Vishada Yoga. It's not really Arjuna's dilemma. Like we said at the beginning, it's the yoga of Arjuna's sorrow, I guess you could say. Remember why we called it the yoga of Arjuna's sorrow? Why didn't we just say Arjuna's sorrow? Remember why we called it the yoga, or why Vyasa calls it the yoga of Arjuna's sorrow?
In part, is it because it's just the process of evolution of change?
Right.
Going through.
Yoga is something that unites the seeker with what is sought. So in this case, sorrow is uniting Arjuna with something much deeper that even he doesn't quite know that he's seeking it. On a deeper subconscious level, we're all seeking freedom. We talked about that before too. So he's getting connected with that goal of freedom through sorrow, in this case. Of the Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita is an Upanishad? I didn't know that. Why are we calling it Upanishad? Is it in the Upanishads or where? Where do we find the Upanishads in the all the huge litany of India's scriptures? Where do they fall? They're in the Vedas. Vedas, we don't know the date, but I've been saying 5,200 years, 300 years for Gita. Is that how old the Vedas are? So how can Bhagavad Gita be an Upanishad?
It's extracted from.
Yes, it is said, we talked about that earlier also. Bhagavad Gita is said to be the essence of the Upanishads. So Vyasa is basically giving the Bhagavad Gita the status of an Upanishad. It's like giving an honorary doctorate. Amma never got a PhD, but State University of New York gave her an honorary doctorate. She doesn't need anybody's doctorate, but they gave it to her, which means they're recognizing her that she deserves such a thing. That's what it is.
Was it thought to be written prior to the Mahabharata or in sequence?
The Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita actually, is part of Mahabharata. It's considered to be, simultaneous along with it. But the difference is that when you look at the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, there's a number of teachings that are coming pretty directly from some of the Upanishads. And Krishna himself admits that later on. He says that this is not my teaching, this is the eternal teaching that was taught by the sun god, blah, blah.
Because the Mahabharata is more of a Purana in style, I think.
It's an Itihasa Purana. It's called Itihasa Purana, historical Purana. Yeah, it's not one of the Mahapuranas, but Ramayana and Mahabharata are in their own category, separate category, because they have historical veracity to them, some order of historical veracity.
But
we don't
it was
know.
thought to be written in sequence as it occurs.
Yes, exactly. So Upanishad means sit near. Like the idea is that you sit near a teacher and learn something. So in the actual Upanishads, the teachers that we're sitting near are all realized beings. So that is what we're trying to do with Amma also, sit near her, not just in darshan, but when we're reading her books, Awakened Children and everything, you're essentially reading, an Upanishad of sorts. You're sitting near Amma in story form and learning things from her. And it's called Brahma Vidya. What's the English we have here? The science of the absolute. Scripture of yoga. Yeah. So science of the absolute, Brahma Vidya, means essentially the theory of spirituality. And the scripture of yoga, that word yoga, usually means some kind of practical side of spirituality. So Brahma Vidya is the theory, Yoga Shastra is the practice of it. And both are needed in order to lead a balanced spiritual life. Thus ends chapter 1. We have a few minutes left if anybody wants to ask any questions. Yes, please.
I want to ask about, we mentioned earlier about the 5 times.
Yes. Okay, the 5 types of, I saved that page, but I can tell them pretty much from memory. You have Deva Yajna, I'll write it on the board. So, they're called the 5 Mahayajnas. To make sure I don't get Deva, Rishi, Pitru, but let's say let's say ancestors, because we don't want to get into too much Sanskrit. Sorry. Pitru is the Sanskrit word. And then humanity. And all beings. Nature. Basically, it's like nature. Means the word that's used is bhuta, but it means, it's the living beings. So it's like plants and animals, basically, the animal kingdom, the natural world. So these are the 5 debts that we're born with. Mahayajnas are done to pay off the 5 mortgages in a little more worldly, mundane terms. So we have a mortgage to the devas. What are the devas? The gods. Yeah, we can just say the gods in this case. And then the rishis. Who were the rishis?
The seers.
The ancient seers and sages. And, Amma's a rishi, we could say also. But let's say your guru is a great being that lived in a past time. Let's say you consider Jnanadev your guru or something like that. So like that, you're paying homage to the sages of days gone by, and possibly to your own guru also. Ancestors, we can understand that. Other than the Western culture, in Asia, almost all of Asia, there's a strong culture of worship of ancestors. Whether you do it in a shamanistic way or some other simple way. In Japan, even though there's such a culturally developed, technologically and economically developed society, they still have that system of ancestor worship. So even if he's like a salaried worker and a businessman or something, every morning he might take a glass of water from the sink and place it in front of a little altar in his house where it's got a picture of his father or mother. It's interesting. They do that just, culturally. So ancestor worship or giving your homage to the ancestors. Humanity, we have a debt to all of humanity because it's because of all the other people that are there. I didn't make this carpet, I didn't make this table, I didn't make this chair. They got here somehow. So it's because of everybody else's help that I'm able to do this, that we're all able to be here. And nature, it's only because of all the animals and the plants and the birds and everything and the worms that we're all here. So we have to be grateful to them. So we have a debt to all these 5 layers of existence. And so the yajnas are the way we pay off those debts. That's what it is. So the way you pay off your debt to the gods, what do you think it would be? But in a general sense, let's say it in a more general sense, what would it be? Some kind of worship. And it doesn't have to be too ritualized. It can just be every morning, like we do Archana. We do 108 names. Chanting, you're praying to a goddess, or you're praying to Krishna or Shiva or Jesus or whatever it is, Buddha. You're offering your worship to some manifestation of divinity. How would we repay our debt to the ancient sages or a modern day sage like Amma? Follow their teachings. How do you follow? The first thing you have to do in order to follow them is what? Study them. Yeah, if you don't know what they are, there's no question of following them. Swadhyaya is usually the thing that's given. Studying the teachings of the ancient sages is the way we repay their debt. Just imagine if you gave some great teaching. You did tremendous austerity your whole life, and you offered your life to teaching something. What would you want people to do after you died? Throw your book in the garbage, You wouldn't care. I just want people to study it. If you just learn this, this is my life's work. That's enough you're paying me back by doing that. So I'm sure, even though the rishis don't have any attachment to that, they wouldn't ask any more of us than just to learn and understand their teachings. Ancestors, this is a little more mundane. Now we're getting into something kind of mundane. The idea is that, because we have a debt to them, it's because of them that we're here, so you make a recognition of that in some form, and can be, worship. It can be ritualized worship. Another way that I've heard of it being done is to offer to help to the elderly. You give help to the elderly, and that way you're paying off your debt to your own ancestors. You're going to be old someday too, right? So then, humanity. How do we clear our debt to humanity? Charity. Yeah. Seva. Yeah. You serve society. You do something good for society. And then how do we clear our debt to nature?
Feed the birds and animals.
Yeah, do good things for nature. Plant a tree. Feed a bird. Feed an animal. Make a house for bugs. The Indeed campaign, Join the Indeed campaign. Conserve water. Conserve paper. All these kind of things. That's a perfect example of how to do it.
What are the Sanskrit terms for nature and humanity?
Bhuta. So it's Deva, Rishi, Pitra, Manava or Manusha, and Bhuta. Bhuta Yajna or Bhuta Ranam. Ranam is the word for debt. Ranam. So you can just say Deva Ranam, Rishi Ranam, Pitra Ranam, and Deva Yajna, Rishi Yajna, or Brahma Yajna as another way of saying it. Different words for these things. Any other questions?
Do a yajna for all combined?
Save time, in other words?
That's irreverent.
Well, let's say you have 5 mortgages. Are they gonna, say, well, that was when they had the subprime thing. Bundle all the bad mortgages together and try to sell them off. Maybe that's economically not a very viable alternative. Do a
horse sacrifice.
Those Ashwamedha yajnas are yagas. They're desire prompted. They're not a question of clearing debts. They're a question of acquiring more. So yajna typically is supposed to be like something a little more selfless. Yagas, at least the way I learned it, are more intended at acquisition, more greed motivated. Maybe it's the other way around. But yajna, that term yajna, actually comes up in the Bhagavad Gita much later. So it's put forth in a very positive light, yajna. Any other? You guys are ready for chapter 2? All right, remember, we're not handing out any more printouts, because I took those printouts just because we didn't have these books. Now we have the books. Yes, David, does.
So maybe we'll do the Tattva Bodha after this?
Tattva Bodha, how many years from now? You're supposed to do Tattva Bodha and those before you even start actually these things, but this is a little more human, for us. And you cover a lot of the same topics that come up in Tattva Bodha when you do the Gita anyhow, just not all in order. Yes, Lorena.
Well, Namaskar. What would be a very practical way that one could pay homage to their ancestors? Like, we can't daily volunteer at a...
No. Okay, so it's mental. Most of it is mental worship. All of these, like when we do the pujas and the homas, the ones from Amma's ashram, and we're doing another one on Sunday. A lot of the steps that we do in the puja, even in a very ritualized puja like that, are mental. You're offering water, and you're saying like, I'm offering you an instrument. I'm offering you some dance. I'm offering you a song. But you're just pouring water into a cup. So it's the bhava, it's the mental feeling that you have at that time, and you're making that sankalpa, you're making that resolve and offering something. So all these, you see these rituals that you might see, they're just pouring spoon after water and chanting mantras. It's just visualization, and you're not offering that thing actually. I mean, because in the end, the point is that it's on the subtle plane. You're offering it to the subtle being because there's no actual. It's not like Amma's right in front of you. You're offering it to the subtle form of that deity. So you can't really offer anything physically. So you offer it on the subtle, which is your awareness and your sankalpa.
Gratitude.
Gratitude, yes, gratitude and appreciation for, you can just be being thankful, gratitude, praying for, wherever they may be now. Because I don't know how many of our ancestors have been liberated, but probably a lot of them are just like us, struggling on the path in some new body somewhere, and so just praying that grandpa is better off, or, my great-grandfather is better off now. Maybe hope he's happy, and hope that all my ancestors are happy. And you can also, think, like one thing that comes to me, especially this winter, was thinking, because supposedly, not that I identify with my American identity that much, but according to the biggest researcher of our family genealogy, which happens to be my biological mother, apparently they came over on the Mayflower or something like that. And after this winter, I was just thinking, how did these guys survive in the winter, Oh, it's like minus 50 wind chill factor. And what did they have to keep themselves warm? And they eked out an existence in this place somehow, somewhere in America. And definitely there would have been really hard times. All for the sake of what? Just to keep a family going. And it's because they suffered like anything that we're here today. Now we have all heaters and, furnaces and everything. Life is easy. But they really were tough. So we can feel gratitude for that. And, maybe I should be more respectful of what the people did in the old days to make this country, So that's another way of looking at it. It's gratitude, but just from a slightly different angle. Okay. And to be continued. We have a nice connection with today's, Arjuna's not ready to surrender, so it means his faith is still a bit immature, it's incomplete. And in case you didn't read the email, see the email, the subject of tomorrow's satsang is, it's reflection and discussion satsang, and the topic is, what is true faith, or real faith, and how does it help us? So if you're not sure whether you're going to make it to tomorrow's satsang, I encourage you to make it. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all for coming. As usual, we've closed formally now. Those who have time limitations are all welcome to leave. And we will, in a few moments, we'll begin a short guided meditation. Just those of you who have time can remain the luxury. Please join us for a short meditation. So close your eyes and keep your back and spine straight, aligned, but relaxed. Breathe slowly and deeply, relaxing your body and mind. As your mind relaxes further and further, imagine yourself in Arjuna's position. And visualize your version of the battle, of the war, your greatest challenge in life. Having to face that without running away. You need strength. You need faith. You need courage. And love, compassion. At the same time, your ego, your impatience, your fears are pushing you the opposite direction. As though we're caught in the vice grips of our inability to face the reality on the one hand and the reality on the other. Arjuna falls to the floor of the chariot, crying. Imagine you two are slumped on the floor, crying tears. Your eyes are half open, looking down. What do you see before you? Lord Krishna's lotus feet come into view. The light at the end of the tunnel. A ray of hope. Maybe if I surrender, there'll be a solution. Let us all pray to Amma to give us that surrender. O Amma, when I find myself collapsing before the challenges of life, give me the strength to mentally surrender to you. O Amma, don't let me fall into the trap of the ego and the illusion of knowing everything. Give me the humility to admit my ignorance, to recognize my helplessness. Amma, even if I don't open my heart to you, please come and open my heart. Find any tiny crevice. You open my heart, Amma, please. Don't give up on me. Let's conclude with the final prayer. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnāād Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamādaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you exhale, slowly open your eyes. Om Namah Shivaya.